Welcome to this week's show, ladies and gentlemen. Well, folks, it really seems it has been a spell since I sat down with you all. More than it seems that way because it has actually been a while since I sat in front of the camera for an episode. Nearly a month has passed, in fact. It was on the 6th of November, to be precise. Between then and now, there's been a lot of action, time with and without some family members, and a few thoughts about the recently celebrated holiday, and that's what I'll be sharing with you all today. Those and a government lie that they keep spewing. Always keep in the back of your mind, people, that when the government lies, it is meant to do one thing: rob us of our liberty. Some way, somehow, the usurpers in our state and national governments are looking for ways to do an end run around their constitutional duty, and that is of securing the people's liberty. Nearly every law passed, bureaucratic agency regulation imposed, judicial decision handed down, or an executive order issued, they accomplish one thing: erode liberty by short-circuiting the Constitution. The usurpers have been quite successful in their endeavors for more than the past century, too, because the people, you and I, have become so apathetic in our responsibility to participate in our system of self-governance. Even with all of that, this week will be a much shorter episode than normal, and I hope you can understand that. The holiday seasons are upon us, and all the activity that goes along with that has really consumed a lot of my time. My family and I got to have a great Thanksgiving dinner at my home here in Sevierville. I was fortunate enough to have my mother drive up from North Carolina with her two puppies, one of which is a brand new golden doodle that she just added to her house, as well as my brother-in-law John came over. It was great having them both for some of the traditional feasts like turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, sweet potato casserole that my daughter makes, corn casserole, pies, and all. There was a lot of food coma going on in the house that day. I just love times like those, and the memories that were made will be cherished forever. My mom has her hand full with two puppies heading forward. Baxter, her beagle, he's a grumpy old man. And the golden doodle, Benji, he's just a typical overly energetic puppy. Two vastly different personalities, and let me tell you that both of them can be quite vocal. Like I always say, though, puppies, no matter what their age, are the best antidepressants ever. You can't be sad with a puppy on your lap or even chewing on your slippers for that matter. On to some schedule info, though. I'll be headed back to Texas and New Mexico again real soon as I wrap up some final contract events with a client for this year. I do get to return home in time to celebrate my wedding anniversary with my bride, as well as Christmas and New Year's before I pick up a hot and heavy travel schedule heading into 2024. So there will be a bunch of information crammed into a compressed episode, folks. With that, let's get on with this week's program. Welcome to a show where we will discuss how the citizens of this republic must continuously fight to maintain our liberty. And those fights are increasingly against our own government. Some of the episodes on liberty will shine a light on exactly how all levels of government are seeking to erode our constitutionally protected rights. We will also discuss the leadership needed to restore our constitutional republic, as well as providing examples of good and bad people in leadership positions in all facets of our society. Additionally, we will discuss the lies the people in positions of power and influence spread every day so they can maintain those same positions. I'm your host, Larry Linden, retired U.S. Navy veteran, small business owner, and candidate for the Tennessee House of Representatives, and this is the Liberty, Leadership, and Lies podcast. Well, folks, let's get it started. As I mentioned in the introduction, this week's episode will be a compressed one. So let's get into a bit of a recap of what has been going on for the past 3 weeks or so. First was the rescheduled time and location for the family vacation. Many of you know that my family's scheduled pilgrimage to the Holy Land with our church had to be canceled because of the demon, subhuman savage's existence has been tolerated for far too long now. Even now, world governments are negotiating ceasefires for some quote-unquote hostage exchanges. Notice that lie being sold to the world right now. Hostage exchange. And that lie is being bought hook, line, and sinker by a vast majority of the world's population. mainly because it's being sold by the government through their best salesman, the corporate mainstream legacy media. Israel did not take hostages. What I believe they did, they mistakenly captured armed terrorist combatants on the field of battle instead of putting them down like the rabid animals they really are. But the subhuman savages of Hamas, they did take hostages. So there is no hostage exchange going on right now. It is an exchange of terrorists for innocent civilian hostages. That's the place the world governments and the legacy media has brought the world to right now, assigning moral equivalency to both sides in this good versus evil conflict, elevating the savages' position and downgrading the nation of Israel's position to one of equality. Rest assured, ladies and gentlemen, this action by the governments of the world and their sycophantic media bootlickers will have second and third order effects. The biggest one is the continuing emboldening of the demons that are here in the United States, many on college campuses and in the halls of Congress. This action continues to embolden them to behave the way they have since this latest episode in this age-old conflict began early last month. This latest lie being pushed by our government right now? Why? Why do you think that our government would allow this lie of moral equivalency to be allowed to propagate? Well, because it allows and emboldens the division happening all over the country right now. It is a distraction meant to cover up the behind-the-scenes usurpations of our liberty. Wow, that got me a bit out of sequence, but I hope you get the point, and I also hope that you see the lie behind assigning some sort of moral equivalency to this conflict. Instead of allowing the nation of Israel to take any and all action in defense of Before I tell you all more about the saga going on with the travel agency, I have to let you all know about the revised location for the family trip. It was a location so diametrically opposed to the Holy Land, but it was the easiest location to arrange last minute travel to. Denise and I used our refunded, yes, refunded, so keep that in mind, refunded plane tickets from Delta Airlines to travel to Las Vegas. It wasn't all it was cracked up to be either. Denise and I have been to Vegas in the past several times. This time it was a bit different. Well, a lot different. Now, we didn't go for the gambling, mind you, mainly the entertainment for both of us, and the buffets, mainly for me. Buffets are a waste of time and money for Denise, but I more than make up for it by consuming her fair share of food. Now, the Holy Land trip was meant to be a Christmas present for our daughter and her husband, so we did not want to leave them high and dry for the holidays, and we brought them along as well. In fact, Denise and I let Kaylee plan most of the itinerary for the few days we were there. Some of the places we visited were quite, shall we say, interesting. A story for another day, though. Needless to say, it was nice to get away and relax for a few days. I, of course, got sick while I was there. On the second full day, I came down with a severe sinus infection, which was challenging, and that we walked on average 4 to 6 miles a day. In fact, one day we walked over 12 miles. It was strange navigating the strip during our stay because the city was setting up for the F1 race the following weekend. That put a lot of the usual attractions out of commission. For example, you couldn't see the fountain show at the Bellagio from the strip because of the grandstands that were erected along the front of the hotel. We did get to see the show, though, because that's where we stayed for this trip. What an initial disappointment that was, let me tell you. Again, that is another story that I'll say for a future episode, maybe. But it is just another one of the indicators of how things are going in our nation right now. We are all paying more for goods and services, and those same goods and services have degraded in quality over the past few years. We need a revival in more ways than one in our country right now. Maybe like the one Argentina is about to experience now that the socialists have been removed from power there. I want to pass my best wishes to their new president in his efforts during his tenure. If you have not watched his interview with Tucker Carlson on X yet, you absolutely must. It was riveting and one of the best explanations of how to take down the destructive forces of socialism. I digress, though. Let me pause for a quick break before I run down some of the past 3 weeks. I'll be right back. All right, folks, we're back to go over some more of the events that happened since we last spoke. Vegas was fun, but not as fun as it used to be. In fact, I mentioned that I love going to the buffets while I'm there. What could possibly be another example of a decline in quality and service? We only went to one buffet for the entire 5 days we were there. It seems now that the buffets are only offered for dinner on the weekends. They did offer brunch buffets during the day, but that was the time the family was out and about exploring the sights along the strip and in Old Town. We didn't pay much attention to the schedule of buffets on this trip because we did not have to in the past. Then there was the fact that we had dinner reservations at a couple of restaurants scheduled before we had left Sevierville. It was a belated anniversary dinner for the kids and an early anniversary dinner for Denise and I. Now, that food, it was fantastic. A 5-star steakhouse, as well as a great Italian restaurant and an Asian restaurant. There was also this food truck. It was like a permanent food truck at one of the locations Kaylee picked out for us to visit. I got a burrito bigger than my head from that one. And as you can see in the video, my noggin is almost big enough to have its own gravitational pull. It was all Denise and I could do to finish the one burrito between us while Kaylee and Eric were inside this place called Area 15. That location, well, it's a topic for an entire episode of the podcast if I were to do one on it, but I most assuredly won't. Suffice it to say, it is definitely not a spot for Gen Xers. It's more along the lines of a millennial generation spot, but most definitely a location for the Gen Zers to hang out at. All in all, though, we did get some downtime away from home and work, but we did not get away from the trouble with the travel agency that was running the Holy Land trip. More on that to come, though. What we also did not get away from was the failing health of my mother-in-law. As you may know, the episode for last week was canceled because Denise, Kaylee, and I traveled back to Denise's childhood home in Ohio so we could lay her mother to rest in the family burial plot. Joanne made it through our trip out of state, but passed away shortly after we returned home to Tennessee. Another thing we could not escape is what seems to be the inevitable drama that often surrounds families during the death and the aftermath of the passing of our loved ones. Sometimes it brings out the bipolar in some people, which is all I will say on that for now. It saddens me to see my bride hurt by certain family members. Saddens, but it's not unexpected to me. Oftentimes, past performance does predict future behavior, and that is definitely the case here. Just a bit of trend analysis on this family member assists in the preparation for the next bit of crazy that inevitably comes from that direction. My family's not immune to it either. As a matter of fact, my dad has been gone for nearly a year now, and there is a lot of drama going on with his estate in New York that is having an effect on both me and my older brother in North Carolina. Imagine that, though. The court system in the People's Republic of New York trying to treat people that live in red states like Tennessee and North Carolina like they treat their own vassals in that communist-occupied territory. Just look what they're trying to do to President Trump and the Trump Organization in that ridiculous real estate fraud case. And much like Denise's situation, the drama, in my opinion, all originates from a single source where you can once again predict future behavior based upon past performance. My family has been dealing with a havoc this one person has caused since 2014, and it will not end anytime soon. People will always disappoint, though, right? That's why Denise and I choose to focus on the one that never disappoints. the one whose promises are always kept. We will get through this like we have gotten through every trial in our lives, together with the love of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. There were other highlights on the Vegas trip as well. A huge one was running into a good friend and his girlfriend during our stay. We had a great time down on Fremont Street. Denise, the kids, and I even rode the zip line on Fremont. That was incredible. Of course, me, having the heaviest center of gravity, so to say, I was the first to the finish line on that ride. Denise, having the lightest center of gravity, was being blown like a leaf in the wind on that line, and the rest of us seemed to be waiting for a long time for her to finish the ride. Now, my family and I, we started the evening by taking a taxi down to Fremont. We took it from our hotel at the Bellagio. But Monty and Lori, our friends, they were so gracious in giving us a ride back to the hotel in their rental car at the end of the evening. 6 adults in a mid-sized rental car. We looked like a clown car unloading in the center ring when we arrived back at the Bellagio. That was fun. Another highlight was riding the high roller Ferris wheel, where we got to see the entire city of Las Vegas at night, including the newest attraction called the Sphere. Now, we only saw it from the outside, but you could tell that this one is a wild experience. It was really cool when it turned into a giant smiley face emoji, and it looked like it was staring right at us in the car on the high roller. So the replacement vacation was not too bad. Like I said, it was mostly about getting away from home and work and participating in some mind-numbing entertainment. It was also our Christmas present for the kids. It was also a nice distraction from the declining health of Joanne, the problems with family members, and the New York State court system, as well as the nonstop lies on television and the internet trying to convince the world about the moral equivalency between subhuman savages and the civilized man. When we come back from this next break, I'll detail the troubles and the name of the travel agency that has placed me in somewhat of a hostage situation. So I'll be right back after this. And we're back for the final segment this week. First of all, I'm going to name the travel agency that seems to be holding my family and I, along with a significant sum of my money, hostage. The agency is called NAWAS, spelled N-A-W-A-S, NAWAS International. Now, as a disclaimer, this is just my personal feelings about this company. But I would encourage anybody that will be traveling using this company in the future to consider the information I have provided in the past and will be providing in this episode as not some anonymous person completing a review on TripAdvisor. You should also consider the large sum of money involved with not just myself, but more than 70 other travelers on this trip alone. So for just this trip that was canceled in November, there was between $250,000 to $500,000 laid out by people that will not be refunded by the travel agency. And like I mentioned in a previous episode, many of those travelers were fixed income retirees who now have between $3,000 and $5,000 each tied up with this agency. With the said agency only offering trips or cancellations with zero possibility of a refund as compensation. For my family trip, we paid $12,000 for the land-only portion for the 4 people going. Again, kudos goes out to Delta Airlines for their prompt customer service and refund of our airline tickets. Anyway, like I just alluded to, NAWAS International has now come out with a counter proposal to refunding the cost of the canceled Holy Land trip. Well, it's actually a few counter proposals. Here are the list of them. Option 1 is to transfer our reservations to a rescheduled Holy Land February 18, 2025 tour starting on the 18th of February. There's some obvious and not so obvious problems with this option that I'll discuss. What should be obvious is this: nobody knows how long this conflict in Israel will last, as well as nobody can predict if the subhuman savages won't do the same thing again just prior to February 2025. Does that mean that my $12,000 can be held up in perpetuity by NAWAS until there is peace in the Middle East? Because let's be realistic about that, folks. That won't happen until Jesus Christ sits on the throne in Jerusalem. Not so obvious is this fact. And it seems that the member of my church that serves as the liaison between the travelers and the agency is oblivious to this fact as well. Called out in option 1 is the February 2025 rescheduled Holy Land trip, and it is specifically to replace the canceled February 2024 trip. That was the second trip my church was taking a group on. The canceled November 2023 trip is not mentioned at all. Well, it seems curious. What did I say early in this episode about past performance predicting future behavior? That could be applying here as well. Oh, and get this. The travel agency has only given the travelers until the 4th of December to make this decision. Pretty quick turnaround, don't you think? It's a lot of pressure. I'll mention this in a bit, but I want you to think about this. Just how will the February 2025 trip be paid for if the travel agency already lost all of the already outlaid monies for the canceled November 2023 trip? Things that make you go, Let's continue with the other options, though, shall we? Option 2 is to transfer our reservations to a new 11 days Footsteps of Paul, Greece, and Greek Isle trip that will depart on the 14th of May next year. Weird how the travel agency can give my family and I a completely different tour without having us pay for it, after they reportedly lost everything they paid for the canceled tour, which is why they cannot refund us. Exactly. Where is the funding coming from for this brand new trip? It's almost as if the travel agency filed their own insurance claim for the canceled trips and recouped all of those expenses and can afford to offer a great replacement trip. The same thing goes for option 1 that I just discussed. Kind of fishy, isn't it? The third option is for NAWAS to grant a full credit, again, not a refund, on any NAWAS tour in 2024. Based upon their actions so far, along with options 1, 2, and 3, I have lost any trust and confidence in this travel agency to plan and execute any itinerary that takes my family and I out of the country, if you know what I mean. Now, the fourth and final option is to cancel our reservation completely, which is probably the company's preferred option for people to choose. As I mentioned earlier, I feel like the travel agency is placing everybody in some sort of hostage situation where they are the only ones benefiting from any of the scenarios they have proposed. Stay tuned on this, folks. I'll keep you all updated. Well, thank you again for joining me this week, folks. Next week, I plan on breaking down the presentation that constitutional attorney Jeffrey Cobble provided about the legislation that Senator Janice Bowling and Representative Bud Halsey plan to reintroduce, titled Restoring State Sovereignty Through Nullification. The presentation was incredible, and if this bill is signed into law, it will go a long way into reining in our out-of-control national government. Remember, it's not a federal government, it's a national government. It will also allow the volunteer state to lead the nation in the fight for people's liberty in our constitutional republic. It will be a significant tool to fight back against the lies told to the people by our central government. We have to wait and see if the General Assembly not only has the backbone to fight back against the corrupt Washington, D.C., but the backbone that is required to act in accordance with the steps required to nullify a federal action in the bill that is built into the law. The backbone necessary to operate with full transparency. With that, we will close with this week's wisdom from God's word, and it comes to us from Psalms 37, 12 to 13. The wicked plot against the righteous and gnash their teeth at them, but the Lord laughs at the wicked, for he knows their day is coming. Their day, and their being the subhuman savages and the usurpers of liberty, their day will come when liberty-loving, God-fearing people once again start taking a stand in the arena in the defense of our God-given, unalienable, self-evident, constitutionally protected rights. Until next week, stand in the arena with me. Reveille, it's time to wake up.